Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Eric, and I'm the developer behind the app Hashboard alongside Ryan Blass. And I was just thinking earlier, there's a lot of new and very powerful features that are in Hashboard that aren't in any other apps or anywhere else. And a lot of powerful things typically aren't so apparent or obvious or easy to understand or integrate. And so I thought maybe it might be a good idea just to make a couple quick videos, maybe a little series, highlighting some of my favorite things, showing you guys how I use them, and hopefully that will be helpful. I'm no YouTuber, so this isn't like pro video stuff. This is just like iPhone videos. But yeah. So first thing I want to talk about in this one is actually SmartMiner, which might be one of my favorite things in there. So let's go downstairs to where my miners are, and we'll start there. Okay, so here we are in my basement, which I'm definitely lucky to have a basement. And I have a little 3D printed workstation here, and so I keep all of my noisy miners down here underneath that. So you can see basically we have a BitX Duo, 2 Gammas, and a NerdQX++. And so then behind there, you're gonna see 4 mean wells. So there's 1 mean well powering the 2 Gammas, 1 mean well powering the Duo, 1 mean well powering the NerdQ, and then another mean well powering the 3 12-volt fans that are on the squid ducts for all the BitX. But the most important couple of details about this is you'll notice that the 3 power supplies for the miners are plugged into Tapo P110M smart plugs. And then in addition, I have a temperature sensor, Wi-Fi Bluetooth temperature sensor set up down here as well. And so now we're gonna go upstairs and look at my other miners, and then we're gonna talk about why all these things are important. All right, so now we're upstairs where I have 3 more miners. So we got the Brains BMM 101. Yo, what up, Steve Irwin? Which the Brains BMM 101, obviously you can see that's plugged into Tapo P110M like the miners downstairs. And then I have 2 Nano 3S. There's one here, which is plugged into a Tapo plug behind the fireplace. And then the other one over here, which actually is not plugged into a smart plug, which is gonna help illustrate something in a second. Also worth noting, because it's going to matter in a second, I have a 3-zone mini split system, which has these little like temperature sensor thingies that turn it on and off. Now we are in Hashboard, so let's go to the SmartMiner page. And so at the top here, you can see it says connected to Apple Home, and then we have the smart plugs that the compatible smart plugs that Hashboard recognized from my Apple Home configuration. I do have a bunch of other smart plugs that are not compatible, and you'll see all the compatibility stuff at the top there about which plugs work. I named each plug based off which miner I was gonna plug into it, just to make it easier for me, which you'll see in a second. So we got the BitAccess plug, the Brains miner, the Nano by the fireplace, NerdQ self-explanatory, and then the Gamma Duo. Down here we got miner assignments. So these are the 7 miners. Nano Samus is the one by the fireplace. Nomad's Nano is the one by the door that does not have a plug. And so you can see that one has no plug. It says no smart plug assigned, but all the other ones are assigned to their smart plug, and that's why I named each plug in Apple Home based on what miner I was going to plug in, because it's easier to just match it to each one. Then the other important thing here, you guys remember I told you I have 2 Gammas running off 1 power supply, so SmartMiner will account for that. So I have both of those Gammas sharing the same smart plug, and it'll do the calculations to properly distribute and figure out which each of those are using out of the total of that. We'll do the room temperature stuff in a second, but the first thing I want to show you here is, now obviously this isn't like apples to apples because one has a little bit higher hash rate right now, but on the Nano on the right here, the one that's not on the smart plug, it's telling us it's using 133 watts at 20 joules per terahash. But the one that is on the smart plug is actually using 146 watts at the wall, which is 13 more watts. And you know, despite small variance in the hash rate, like I said, 22 joules per terahash, which is definitely higher no matter how you slice it. And so now the crazy thing I want to show you is I'm gonna remove the one I don't have a plug for yet. So we just have the 6 that are on plugs. And we're gonna compare, you know, 6 miners is like a decent amount. Some people have a lot more, some people have a less, some people use way more miners. These are all basically like small home miners. But let's see like what the actual total difference on this setup is with and without the truth coming to us from SmartMiner. So first I will get rid of the one that doesn't have a plug. And now we'll go back to SmartMiner. And let's just remove all the assignments first. There. Okay, so no smart plugs assigned. So if we look at the power overview here, it's looking like 3.3 amps, 19.3, 19-ish joules per terahash, and 393 watts. So what was it? 3.3 amps, 19 joules, 393. And so now we'll put the plugs back on all of them. So we go Nano Samus, goes to Nano Samus. Q, Mother Brain, Duo, and then we're going to put both of the gammas on the bit axes. Okay, so now we have all the smart plugs reassigned. Let's see what we get. So over an amp and a half more, 22.5 joules per terahash, not 19.3. And 462 watts. What did I say? 393. So that's like almost 70 watts more. That's a huge difference. And it makes a big difference on cost too. So like, let's go to power cost. So right now, let's just look at annual. We're looking at $429 annually with the truth coming from SmartMiner. Let's see what that goes down to. If we take it off. Sorry, I should have just did this earlier. I told you I'm not a YouTuber. Okay, plugs off. Let's check the power. I already forgot what it was, but it was in the mid 400s if I recall. So like, that's a big difference there too, even if you're trying to just track honest cost of operation. So like, this is huge. Like, hopefully you can see why this is one of my favorite things. Like, what the miners report is not the truth, and it's not by a little bit, it's by a lot. And you can't get this truth anywhere else except for Hashboard and SmartMiner. And the last thing I'll show you here quickly, because I appreciate your time and I know your time is valuable, is the temperature part. So you guys saw the temperature sensor I have downstairs. That's the Shelly H&T basement. And so you can see I have my 4 miners that are downstairs assigned to that. And then these other sensors are my mini split ones that I showed you. So my living room is the only other room that I have miners in. So we have the Nano and the Mother Brain in there now because we deleted the other Nano. So now what we can do is, like, I know this won't be for everybody, but for me at least, you guys saw I have like 12 volt 3000 RPM fans and squid ducts and all this crazy stuff going on because I push my miners like to the max as far as overclocking, at least the ones down there. And that's usually limited by temperature. You usually hit a temperature ceiling. And so for me, I live in New England. The temperatures are wild, like especially in the spring and the fall, but even just seasonally, like, you know, I've been running my miners at a certain setting and overclock, keeping them in a safe temp all winter because my basement was 62 degrees. You saw today it's at 73, so like I started getting high temp warnings because spring is here, temperatures are getting warmer, things are warming up, and it's like that last fall, having to tune them up as the temperatures drop, and that can even vary in one day. Like you can have cool in the morning, hot in the day, cool at night, and leaving your miner on one setting when it's cooler, you're missing hash rate, and or it's a hassle to have to manually adjust it. So for me, the deal here, let's go to one of the ones downstairs. Let's go to the Duo. So I found it to be a super pain in the butt to have to always be changing my settings based on the ambient room temp because I ride the edge with the overclock. So what I can do is come in here to the presets and automation, go into the preset editor, and I want to edit my presets for SmartMiner temp. And so I already have one here, but you guys can see that you can set up to 4 different temperature thresholds that you want to automate based upon. And so you can see right now by default my Duo, because I backed it off, is at 585 and 1280. But what I've done now is set up a temperature. So you can see it says you can choose actually when room temp goes above or when room temp goes below, the temperature, and then what tuning you want it to send based on that temperature. So you guys know I said all winter the room temperature was at 62 degrees, but I had to change it now that it hit around 73. I started getting high temperature warnings. So 70 degrees seems like a reasonable kind of cutoff point for where that would happen. So right now I backed it off to 585 and 1280, but now I can have this set, say, okay, when the temperature goes below 70 degrees, crank it back up to 600, 1300, and now I can come out here on the miner and I can set my tuning source to SmartMiner temp and hit start SmartMiner auto tune. And so now that's just running. So now when Hashboard detects that the room downstairs drops below 70 degrees, it's going to automatically crank my Duo back up for me. And I can do that independently across any of my miners based on room temperature and never have to hassle with manually doing it every time the temperature goes up or down. So hopefully you guys can see why SmartMiner is definitely one of my favorite things in here for sure. It's incredibly powerful, and it's definitely not something you can get anywhere except for Hashboard. So thank you guys for sticking with me. Hope you guys are excited. Any questions about this, just let me know. Peace.